a familiar cliffhanger is unfolding with another recurring character. Tisha, identified as patient 0 and potentially crucial for developing a cure, has gone missing.
Is Tisha here?
Huh. Who?
I hoped she'd be here.
Oh, I haven't seen anyone.
Sounds familiar? The last time we encountered Yerema, we were simply told she had been relocated and then she vanished.
What about the native woman, Yerema?
That's a more complicated case. She's being taken to another location.
The in-game data provides no clarity on the narratives of Tisha and Yerema. However, we have some context for Yerema since she recounted her story while we escorting her to the lab after rescuing her from her father. Additionally, we previously escorted her father, gaining insight into his perspective as a native leader on the zombification process. We will also analyze this along with the overall plot. The plot we are examining here actually comes from the novelization. There are numerous differences between its adaptation, the book, and the actual game, as the novel was penned by Mark Morris well before the game was launched. This has led to a storytelling approach that is either less similar or entirely different between the two mediums. However, in the cases of Yerema and her father Ope, as depicted in the book, there is a notable similarity and even a complementary aspect when we hear their narratives while escorting them. Yerema discusses the harsh treatment of women by the villagers and the disturbing religious beliefs held by the natives, which are influenced by her father. On the other hand, Ope offers a contrasting view of the zombies, referring to them as immortals, which appears to be a complete misunderstanding that results in a disastrous outcome.
My father gave me to an old man he owed money to, and the man made me his slave, so I ran away to the city to learn how to read, to live like you. Here women are treated like dirt, beaten, raped.
Yerema explains that her ability to read and write stems from her decision to escape to the city during her teenage years. Her father sold her to settle his gambling debt with a man who then forced her into a life of servitude, a slave. Her father's actions left her trapped in a situation she found intolerable, which ultimately motivated her to flee. By seeking freedom in the city, she not only liberated herself from that life but also gained the skills that would empower her in the future. Initially, she believed returning home was impossible, fearing that her father's wrath would be severe. However, after spending time with civilized individuals, she began to appreciate their capacity for reason. She noticed how they engage in conversation, listen attentively, and sometimes even change their opinions if presented with a compelling argument. This experience led her to reconsider her views on her own community, thinking perhaps her father could be persuaded to understand her perspective. This newfound hope proved to be misguided. When she attempted to communicate her thoughts to her father, she was met with resistance. Instead of engaging in a dialogue, he escorted to extreme measures, seeking to purge what he deemed evil from her. His actions were not only dismissive but also cruel, as he enlisted others from the village to inflict pain and humiliation upon her, to torture and ritually rape her. The contrast between her expectation and reality was stark. She had envisioned a possibility for understanding and reconciliation, but instead faced a harsh and violent response. This experience shattered her belief in the potential for change within her own community, leaving her to grapple with the painful truth of her father's unyielding nature. Shortly thereafter, the man who assaulted Yerema fell ill and passed away. However, their story did not end there. They returned as the undead. Yerema initially believed that her father interpreted this event as a divine sign of forgiveness rather than recognizing them as zombies. This perspective stemmed from his long-standing adherence to a cannibalistic ritual rooted in an ancient belief that humans could exist in a state between life and death, achieving immortality. This transitional phase is referred to as dreamtime. This belief was shared by Ope during our in-game escort journey.
Far before the first of my kind walked the land, before this world even existed as it is, there was another time, the dream time. In this time, nothing had substance, and there was no life or death. We existed without fear, without pain, without purpose. We traveled there in our sleep, for the dream time is always with us, waiting in the darkness. There! I see one! The spirits who watch over us rose from deep within the void and darkness, and created the sky, and the sea, and the land, and everything alive, and everything that isn't. The great serpent who created the sea, and Great Mother, who gave us life, still watch over us. And many other greater and lesser spirits, and their legions. Do you see them? There! The immortals, the resurrected, their spirits remain on this plane. They live in both worlds, the dream time and our time. That is why they are sacred. They consume us to become one with us, for they are the bridge between the two worlds, the world of the spirit.
He was convinced that the gods have granted the men a form of immortality, sending them back in a state that allowed the villagers to consume their brains and, in turn, gain eternal life. This led to a frenzy of brain consumption, as many in the village sought to partake in this supposed gift from the gods. As a result, a significant number of villagers succumbed to this ritualistic practice, leading to a widespread death and transformation into zombies. This cycle of violence and resurrection spiraled out of control, leaving the community in chaos as they grappled with the consequences of their beliefs and actions.
Because of the village is dead. We believed they had died and were resurrected, that they were immortal and that we could be as well. Please take me with you.
The situation unfolded differently than Ope had anticipated. Rather than transforming into zombies as he had hoped for divine forgiveness, he and his family remained unaffected by the virus. They contracted it but experienced no symptoms. They simply continued their lives as usual. Yerema's father, however, misinterpreted their immunity as a sign of divine wrath, believing that the gods has cursed them because of Yerema's escape. In a misguided attempt to appease the god, Yerema's father decided to make a drastic sacrifice. He believed that the only way to lift the supposed curse was to offer his daughter to the deities. In a cruel twist of fate, he confined her within a tomb, leaving her there with no means of survival, hoping that this act would restore favor with the gods.
My father locked me up here and left me to die. He surely would have murdered me if you hadn't shot him.
This tragic decision stemmed from a profound misunderstanding of their situation. While OP and his family were living proof of resilience against the virus, Yerema's father was blinded by fear and superstition. Instead of recognizing their unique immunity, he chose a path of desperation that would ultimately lead to devastating consequences for his daughter. The Kuroni, known in the novelization as the Kuro tribe, generally preferred to remain isolated, though they did engage with the outside world from time to time. The spread likely began with a trader or perhaps one of the security personnel who encountered the Kuroni during their visits and subsequently brought their virus back to the city. From the story we found above, there are three unusual thoughts that need to be discussed. Firstly, how does this story connect to Dead Island 2, which claims that Reed sent the consortium to investigate HKEA? In this narrative, Yerema is the one who carries the pathogen HK virus in its pristine form, while his father is responsible for spreading the virus from the forest to the city and finally to the resort. Since I haven't found the answer yet, for this plot hole, I will propose a temporary theory that Reed encountered a simple case of HKA, then when he began his research in Narapela with the help of Geoparm's takeover, he was able to accelerate the effects of the HKA disease, which typically takes years to infect, allowing it to trigger HKA within hours.
The pieces are starting to fit together. Kuru is endemic among the native population here, but the incubation period can take up to 12 years. Many of the natives here have built up an immunity which keeps the virus latent even longer. But this new virus is very different. It goes full-blown within hours. I think I may be able to create a vaccine, but to do so, I need a stable version of Kuru that hasn't yet mutated. We must find someone from Ope's clan, someone who hasn't had any contact with the infected, and get a sample of their blood or tissue.
All right then. Now you just need to find someone from Opie's clan who hasn't had contact with the infected. And they don't even have to be bloody alive. See, they have a practice here where they embalm the dead, turn them into mummies, right? You just need to find one of these mummies and take a sample.
When we search for samples from the mummy, we not only obtain them but also uncover another fact that confirms Yerema contains the original form of the pathogen in her blood. This is explained not in the main game but in the Rider White campaign DLC.
I examined her blood and found the pathogen in its pristine form. She's the source of the plague. A walking time bomb.
I don't know how or
Why or where it came from, but I want to study it. Maybe I can create some kind of vaccine.
However, this remains a professional theory aimed at addressing a particular plot hole until we can develop a more comprehensive story to fill it. I encourage you to share any additional theories in the comments, and I would greatly appreciate it if you could point out any facts that might resolve this issue. Next, how could Yerema transmit the virus while being tortured and raped? A simple theory can be applied. When Yerema is tortured and bleeding, her wounds and blood could spread the pathogen HK. However, if we recall the experiences of the Slayers in the sewer after encountering Conrad, as immune beings or humans, they released their out-of-age transformation or fury mode when they felt extremely threatened, right? If the same thing happened to Yerema, it means that when she was clearly in a dire situation, facing her father's refusal to accept her plea for change, which only led to more cruelty and suddenly being attacked by multiple assailants, we can imagine that Yerema, as an immune or human, entered fury mode in this desperate state. However, Reed found that the pathogen HK only triggers out-of-age prematurely, suggesting that Yerema's fury mode is more straightforward, similar to the difference in fury modes between the hero in the first game and the Slayers in the sequel. The heroes surely also have fury mode, but they didn't physically or psychologically change anything, while their potential or specialty is indeed boosted by the out-of-age, right? Sam B with his exceptional health and blunt expertise can rage mass his opponents with his knuckles. Xian with her agility, exceptional stamina and sharp weapon expertise can rage slash her opponent while gaining stamina and even regain fury faster. Purna with her exceptional firearm expertise can rage shoot her opponent while positive aura can buff nearby allies in her vicinity, and even her hatred towards men can make her deal more damage to the opposite sex. Same goes with Logan and his love for alcohol, all of which helps him to heal from it. And not forgetting his professional football skill, he uses knife instead of a ball to re-throw it at his opponent. All of this supports Reed's claim about the pathogen HK from Benoi only triggering the Autowits prematurely, explaining how they didn't significantly change their fury mode as legitimately as the zombies do, like the Slayers in Los Angeles. Last but not least, OP's belief in dreamtime and the cannibalistic desire to consume to become one. It might initially seem misguided, unethical, or even foolish. However, in Sola's side mission, Flash Memories, the entity known as Clother somewhat confirms OP's belief.
The immortals, the resurrected, their spirits remain on this plane. They live in both worlds, the dream time and our time. That is why they are sacred. They consume us to become one with us, for they are the bridge between the two worlds, the world of the spirit.
The greater urge. Bigger than us. Bigger than all things. Individually, we are nothing to it. But together,
we are so much. We want so much.
To spread. To consume.
To taste you. Become one with you. Together. Forever.
What's on your thoughts about it all? I am Fury Rust. Thanks for watching and I'll see you down the line.